Welcome back to International Finance. I am Andy Kim, your Dr. Finance. This part, we're going to go through the types of international banking offices. A whole spectrum of banking offices kind is here, right? So the first thing is about correspondent banking, the lightest degree of having international exposure, right? Before you physically go there and then just do your banking business in foreign country. Well, first open your account, right? Mutually having deposit account with other banks in the country that you're interested in. That's a correspondent banking relations. And number two is setting up a rep office, representative office in that specific country. And then you develop it into foreign country branches, right? Branch level, and see if you can make more money out of it or not, right? If it is not promising, then that's, just maintain that branch or just reduce it down to rep office level and then depending on the situation, right? And then if the business over there is more successful, you develop it into a subsidiary or affiliate bank, right? You can think about the Bank of America's expansion into Korea, right? Its history, right? They initially set up rep office and then they set up a Seoul branch where I worked. But they set up this branch in 1960s or 70s already. Okay, and then they found out, Korea is a fast-growing country, and then is exporting a lot to America. So, for Bank of America's perspective, it's a good business, right? In doing trade finance, a lot of things to do over there. So, they set up some subsidiaries in 1970s or 80s, and then even created an affiliate bank. The affiliated bank, which is 한미은행, right? Hanmi, Koram Bank, Korea American Bank. Bank of America coming to Korea, they created Koram Bank over here. And then they did a good business, right? And then as time went by after East Asian financial crisis, it was not as much promising as before. So they scaled it down, okay? And then essentially they wrapped up and said, we are not going to do business over here. And then they closed down that 한미은행. So that's, they're moving from here and there level depending on the business perspective in that foreign country or in Korea, right? Right. And then in America, there's some special things called the eject bank. Oh, by the way, subsidiary affiliated banks, right? One of the things you can see is Stanchart Bank, Ch11, right? Stanchart is a global bank from Britain, and then they have an affiliated bank over here, right? And then Citibank has affiliated bank over here. They set up their retail branches, and then they've been doing a lot of business, even more than Bank of America. But recently they started to close down, and then they said, we are not going to do retail business over here. It's not as much promising, by the way. Number one, Korean market is, population-wise and economic size, it's kind of small. How do you say? It's getting shrunk, getting reduced, right? 수축 사회, and what is it? Fintech, right? A lot of people go to fintech services instead of going into retail banking branches. And then Korean retail banks are good enough. So much to the Citibank, relatively not that much advantageous. When I was in your age, like 20 years ago, Citibank and Bank of America or JP Morgan Chase, Chase Manhattan, they were super banks, right? It's like we have to learn something from American banks, right? That was my spirit of learning and working over there. A lot of gaps existed between Korean banks and American banks. Similar to Korean universities and American universities, the gap was really huge. But with the banking crisis or global financial crisis, over time we developed Korea, and then the super duper bank in America, they turned out to be going down. And it turns out they got bailout money, and then Citibank, and then all these kind of guys, right? It turns out they're all the same human beings, right? So the people mindset, right? The retail guys, they're like, Korean bank or American bank, whichever. Previously, it has been prestigious to deposit to the Citibank. Oh, rich guys go to American banks or Swiss bank. But nowadays, yeah. Um, that's that. And then eject banks is there. Offshore banking centers. We're going to cover that one. Eject bank is more specific to American setting. And then offshore banking center is more about the, what is it? The tax haven, right? Tax haven. 조세 피처, 조세 피난처, right? Bahama, Mama, yeah, that's there. Barbados, or this kind of Cayman Island, and there in the Cayman Island, you see a lot of paper companies or shell banks, shell branches. Only post office is there. Post office box is there. No real branch, just a legal entity. Why? Because of the tax advantage. That's the idea. International banking facilities, that's we're going to talk about a little later. Okay. And then, excuse me, the correspondent banking. Yeah, I said before, it's a relationship exists when two banks maintain deposits with each other. It's like first time say hi. Yeah, let's have some long-term relation, but for initially we set up lighter version relation like correspondent banking, and then it's about mutually opening each other's deposit account. We learned about it in chapter 2, 3 or something. Correspondent banking allows banks, multinational corporation clients to conduct business worldwide through the local banks or its correspondents. And then rep office is the next level. The representative office is a small service facility staffed by parent bank personnel that is expats, right? That is designed to assist MNC clients to the parent bank in dealings with the bank's correspondents. And then representative office, rep office, also assist with information about local business customs and credit evaluation of the MNC's local customers. So many of the foreign banking branches, right, in 1998 or 7, they used to be a rep office level. Very small number of people were working in those prestigious areas, like in Chongno or Gwanghwamun area, Gwanghwamun Gyobo building, right, or Seoul Finance Center these days, right. Anyway. They've been shrinking down or expanding depending on the macroeconomic situation of Korea. Okay, sometimes they became foreign branches. Sometimes they shrink down, and then each time the news media covers that. Oh, Goldman Sachs has been expanded into asset management business and doing this and doing that. And afterwards they say, oh, Goldman Sachs is retreating from Korea because maybe it's not as much promising as before or whatever reason, right? We've been paying attention to it, but they still have those exposures in some different businesses, right? Even though you see a news coverage that say, oh, the UBS shrink down their businesses in Korea, it's not that they are just departing totally from Korea. It's not that Korea will be suffering from another financial crisis, but it's because of they're not making as much money as before, right? That's the simple story. Not Korea having another financial crisis. Come on, right? This is a big enough of a country nowadays. And number 2, I am educating you guys strongly so that we will not suffer from further financial crisis in the future, hopefully. Anyway, so that's another thing. Okay. Right. Subject to both banking regulations in home country and in foreign country, and then they can provide a much fuller range of services than a rep office. And foreign bank branches in Bank of America, where I used to work, we used to have about 100 people over there. 100 people. About 20 to 25 of them working in trading desk, and then about as many numbers in credit analysis part, corporate credit, and then the remaining part in operational side, okay, back office. Now, branch banks are the most popular way of U.S. banks to expand overseas. And then subsidiary and affiliate banks. Well, that's a subsidiary is a locally incorporated bank, wholly or partly owned by a foreign parent. You may wonder why do you have this kind of distinction of a spectrum of different forms of banks, right? Because bank is heavily regulated. Okay, it's not like manufacturing or simple service companies like Starbucks or Apple or something like that, right? You need to have a government approval, a charter to do your banking business in a certain sector, in a certain businesses, like deposit or doing FX transactions or derivative trading, all these kind of things. The legal regulators put an eye on you. And then why is that the case? Well, first of all, the banking business is more like what? The blood and of this your human body, right? Of the economy, blood circulation, so that the government doesn't want you to screw up the blood flow in the economy, right? So that the deposit or whatever, okay? They have to pay special attention to these kind of things. And then FX derivatives, they don't want you to take excessive risk, and then they want to limit it. And then deposit, by the way, they don't want this, your foreign retail banking branch, as a way to evade taxes, right? Tax evasion. Oh, Swiss bank. Oh, yeah. Any of you from Switzerland, by the way? Hey, right? That kind of secrecy, they don't want it, right? The government. Number two, in Bank of America, Korea, I remember so many of the people were stopping by the branch, and then they were asking, do you have a deposit retail function over here? So that I opened my Bank of America account in California. Can I retrieve my money from your branch over here? We did not have that retail branch services. So it was extremely difficult to, treat those kind of persons. No, we said, no, please don't come, right? It's corporate banking. It's not retail branch, right? We are doing high business kind of things, right? Anyway, they didn't understand still, right? But that's typically what happens. Anyway, affiliated bank is one that partly owned but not controlled by the parents. And then U.S. parent banks like to have foreign subsidiaries because they allow U.S. banks to underwrite securities. Underwriting securities is like issuing your stock. Let's say Coupang, right? Coupang doing IPO in New York Stock Exchange, right? Remember that? Coupang, somebody has to be an underwriter. Underwriter, what do you mean? Well, it used to be IPO going on in 100 years ago, and then there had to be a sheet, a piece of papers, and then here's the terms of contracts of IPO. Let's say here's a description of the companies and things like that. Those bankers, they had to be, there's a company, there's a banker. Some bankers have to introduce this company that nobody knows. Coupang was not known to US investors, right? And then Goldman Sachs was the bankers taking this guy to the New York Stock Exchange. And then why do we call them underwriters? Because they are the one who, historically, right, writing IPO reports and introducing these companies and then raising this capital on behalf of them. And then under this, right, they write their name as Goldman Sachs is in charge of it. Okay, underwrite. Okay, under this they write it, and then anybody interested in the Goldman Sachs, right? Goldman Sachs call up Morgan Stanley and other JP Morgan Chase kind of big investment banks, and ask, are you interested in this one? Join in as an underwriter, right? I'll be the lead manager. You will be the sub. How do you say? We're going to get to that IPO part later on, but they together work as a syndicate of underwriters together. Okay, underwriting. So 주간사, they say in Korean terminology. Their job is to mobilize their personal or the capital market network. Okay, network with rich people and then general investors all around, and then help these guys raise their capital, right? That's their function. IPO, right? Underwriting securities, eject bank. These are in the U.S. federally chartered subsidiaries of U.S. banks that are physically located in the U.S. and are allowed to engage in a full range of international banking services. The EDGE Act was a 1919 amendment to Section 25 of the 1914 Federal Reserve Act. And then offshore banking services, right? Offshore banking centers. Offshore banking centers is a country, okay? Banking center is a country whose banking system is organized to permit external accounts beyond the normalized scope of local economic activity. The host country usually grants complete freedom from host country governmental banking regulations, and then the IMF recognizes the following as major offshore banking centers. Bahama Mama. Got the biggest town in Bahama Mama. Yeah. Bahrain, and then the Cayman Island. Oh, tax haven, yes. And then the Hong Kong, Netherlands, and then Panama and Singapore. Very low tax rate, and then a lot of banking freedom is there from the perspective of the foreign bankers, right? And then shell branches, right? Paper company kind of things. It need to be nothing more than a post office box. The actual business is done by the parent bank at the parent bank level. The purpose was to allow US banks to compete internationally without the expense of setting up operations for real. So sometimes they needed to set up some foreign paper company over there, offshore, be a vehicle, special purpose vehicle. A lot of fishy transactions going on. Yeah, that happens. International banking facilities, well, is a separate set of accounts that are segregated on the parent books. An international banking facility is not a unique physical or legal identity. Any US bank can have one. International banking facilities have captured a lot of the euro-dollar business that was previously handled offshore. Now, this exhibit in 11.2 shows the organizational structure of international banking offices from the US perspective. Here on the left-hand side, you see the type of bank, and then the second column is about physical location from the perspective of US government, and then accepting foreign deposits versus not, making loans to foreigners versus not. You say yes or no depending on this, the structure of this, the type of banks, right? And then subject to Fed Reserve requirements, right? 지급준비금, right? 지불준비금, reserve requirements. And then FDIC insured or not, right? 예금보험 kind of things. Coverage versus not, and separate legal entity from parent versus not. You can go through and then check out just like a cookbook whenever you need to study as you step into your banking career later on. Okay, fine. And then capital adequacy standards. I'm going to talk about this thing in the next video. So thanks for watching, and then see you next video. Bye bye.